Because the gospel today was very interesting. Jesus had cast the demons into the pigs, and the people didn't want him to stay. Remember? They begged him to leave, and so what did Jesus do? He left. If you don't want to have God in your life, he'll leave you alone. And you end up with a bunch of dead pigs. Or Jesus crosses over the boat, over the sea, and he gets out, and when he gets out, this ruler of the synagogue comes and bows down before him. Now remember, there's a huge crowd that had been waiting for him. Because remember, before he went to cast out the demons into the pigs, he had fed the 5,000, and those people were still about. And they were waiting for him to come back, free food. And if you read, like there's several chapters in the Gospel of John, particularly John chapter 6, where it goes through all of this conversation he's having with his people, letting them know that I'm the new Moses, right? And if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. And of course, it says that some of them got offended at that, right? It says many stopped following him. But, okay, before that happens, big crowd is around him, and the leader of the synagogue shows up. And so, make room for the leader of the synagogue, right? The sea part, the sea of people, all those people that are around him. And he bows in front of Jesus and says, come to my house and pray for my daughter. She's very, very sick. Pray for my daughter. She's dying. Come. And Jesus says, okay. So it's different from the guys with the pigs, right? The pigs people said, we don't want you here. So he left. The leader of the synagogue says, please come. So he comes. This is how it works. Do you want God in your life? Ask him to come. You don't want God in your life? That's fine. He'll leave. Right? And on his way, with this huge crowd, to go to the leader of the synagogue's house, a certain woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, ritually unclean, couldn't get married, right? And of course, in that world, if you weren't married, and if you were a woman and not married, I don't know how she survived. Not very well, that's for sure. And she says, if I can just touch the edge of his garment. And so she worked her way through the crowd, right? This is true elbows up. I don't know what our government is doing right now, but this woman knew what elbows up meant. She worked her way through the crowd to get close to Jesus. It wasn't easy. She works her way through the crowd and gets behind him and bends down and touches the hem of his garment. And Jesus stops and says, someone touched my clothes. Peter says, duh. Like you're being thronged by thousands of people. You know? It's like those concerts, right? Where everybody's like all squished together and they're just, you know. Of course people are touching you. He says, you know, and I love this one. I think this sentence is one of the deepest things Jesus says. He said, no, somebody touched me. You see, it's possible to just join the crowd and to bump up against Jesus and never touch him. It's possible. it's also possible to fight through the crowd and really touch Jesus. And really touch him. And of course, the difference has nothing to do with Jesus. It has nothing to do with the crowd. It has to do with the person who reaches out and touches. You know, people struggle with the church. They struggle with the church because it's full of hypocrites. They struggle with the church because the bishops are imperfect. They struggle with the church because it's too much this. They struggle with the church because it's not enough that. They struggle with the church because whatever. It's the crowd that is around Jesus. And the crowd around Jesus is messy. Right? Crying babies, crying nursing mothers, and people who are sick, all kinds of stuff. The crowd, it makes it difficult. Sometimes you have to work through the crowd to touch Jesus. And that's what this woman did. And Jesus said, somebody touched him. Somebody touched him. Because power went out from me. And then, of course, when she realized she couldn't hide, she was who would want to say this publicly, right? Oh yeah, let me tell you my really embarrassing medical history. Publicly, right? But I guess, to touch Jesus is to be touched by Jesus. And having been touched by Jesus, I guess nothing much mattered anymore anyway. Who cares? Whatever. She told him everything. And again, very, very beautiful. What does he say? He says, daughter. In Matthew's version of it, he says, take courage, daughter. Not just daughter, but take courage. Right? And again, this isn't a little girl. If she's been bleeding for 12 years, right? This is a woman. And yet, he says, daughter. He's going to go and heal the little girl. And he says to her in Aramaic, they only give us the Aramaic, something, kumi, talitha kumi, that's it. Talitha kumi in Arabic. There used to be a few villages in Syria that still speak Arabic, but in the last war they all got destroyed. But I got to meet some of the refugees that still speak Aramaic. So there are, but I think their kids and grandkids won't, and that language will die out completely. But anyway. So he says, Talitha Kumi, little girl, I say to you, rise up. She rises up and he says, give her something to eat. Well, one more thing. When Jesus goes to the house, they're already mourning. Because back in those days, if you could afford it, if somebody died, you hired professional mourners, right? And, say, you haven't lived until you've been to a real Arabic funeral. They really know how to mourn, boy. I had to do a funeral once for an Arabic family at an Arabic church. I didn't speak Arabic, but because their priest had died, and there was no one else, so I went and I did the service, and they really knew how to mourn. Us white people, we don't know how to mourn. I'm telling you, we just stand there, maybe a little tear droops out, but those Arabic people, they knew how to mourn. They just let it all out. So you can imagine this crowd of people just what? And Jesus comes in and says, Be still. She's not dead. She's just sleeping. And it says they laughed at him because they knew she was dead. And the old King James, but I memorized this a long time ago in the old King James, it says, they laughed him to scorn. I know, it is. And modern translations just say they laughed at him because they knew he was dead. And I wonder how many times you and I, me, like I won't even say you, how many times I have kind of laughed, like Sarah in my tent, kind of secretly. Because, I know, for example, that the price of property here is so expensive. I don't know if it'll ever happen that we could ever afford to buy a church. Yeah, sure, we'll see, right? Because I think I know. And that's the problem. That's the problem. God is able to save. Don't laugh at God. Right? But I know me. I know my problems. I know my situation. It could never happen to me. No. You might have to suffer for 12 years. You might have to suffer a real long time. But don't laugh just because you think you know. Because God is a pretty sneaky guy. God will act in ways we don't expect. God will save. He will do whatever is necessary to save us. Pretty amazing. So, yeah, we may, I used to say that sometimes God just brings us all the way down to the gutter and then drags us there for a while. Sometimes we go through experiences like that. But that doesn't mean we're going to spend the rest of our life in the gutter. God will pull us out. In the name of the Father and the Son